my businesses have always been the vehicle for my own personal development. They've been the vehicle that causes me to level up and do things that I never would do on my own. And so my first company, having to learn how to like hire people and fire people and manage people and lead teams and train people, and all of these things were skills that I had to acquire over time that I had no interest in doing. I had no interest in learning these things, but it literally, like, my business made me a better person.
On today's episode of Rise, Grind, Repeat, we talked to Bryan from GreenPal. He's a serial entrepreneur who's created a marketplace for landscapers and those who need landscaping services. So dive right in. Bryan, thank you so much for joining on another episode of Rise, Grind, Repeat. I'm excited because looking at your past, looks like you're a bit of a serial entrepreneur, and would love to learn more about that. Maybe share some insights of learnings that you've had along the way to help other entrepreneurs that are starting out and who are part of our audience. But before we get into GreenPal and where you're at now, would love to hear how your kind of journey started as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, cool. So thanks for having me on, Dustin. I appreciate it. So I'm a lifelong entrepreneur. I've never had a job. I actually started mowing yards in high school as a way to make extra cash. My dad forced me to mow my first yard, and I just kind of drug kicking and screaming into entrepreneurship. And so I started mowing yards in high school as a way to make extra money. And by the end of my first summer, I had like 10 customers that I was mowing yards for. And I stuck with that business all through high school, all through college. By the time I graduated college, I had to make a decision. Was I going to go into the job market and take a pay cut, or was I going to double down on this lawn mowing business? And I decided just to double down on the grass cutting business and grew that into an actual company. Over about a 15-year period of time, I grew that to 150 employees, over $10 million a year in revenue. And in 2013, that business was acquired by one of the largest landscaping businesses in the United States. So growing that company from just myself and a push mower to 150 people, 400 or 500 lawnmowers, 70, 80 trucks going out every day. I learned the hard way of how to build a business from scratch, how to build a team, how to lead, how to manage, how to market, how to build a sales team. Like all of those lessons I kind of learned by hacking my way through it. And then after that, I retired. I kind of took 6 months off, and I got bored, and I decided, okay, it's time to start the second company. And I started GreenPal, which is kind of like the Uber for lawn mowing. If a homeowner needs to get their grass cut, they just download GreenPal, and they get hooked up with a good lawn mowing service in less than a few minutes. And we've been at this 7 years, and we're at the definition of a 7-year overnight success. We're going to do $20 million in revenue this year. We're nationwide. A few 100,000 people using the platform. And so now I've kind of had to do the same business, but strictly as a digital startup, as building a marketplace to enable the transactions to happen smooth and seamlessly. And I learned a lot, on the second go around on how to build software, how to scale software, and how to distribute it. And it's been a lot of fun. I'm glad I got started on it.
You are literally the epitome of the American dream. Really cool stuff. I mean, both companies from 0 to 10 plus million. I mean, that's huge. What was the deciding factor going from, I want to try and find a job to starting this? Because I mean, that's go to college. You paid all that money to go to college. Most people would want to see the ROI in that degree and go pursue a career. So what was that whole thought process, and what made you steer towards running your business?
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I like to think that I am kind of the embodiment of the American dream to a degree, because I'm not the smartest guy. I didn't come from money. I had a humble, lower middle class upbringing, but I was just able to learn business quickly and learn it early enough and just execute and work really hard on my businesses. And that kind of improved my station in life. And so I like to tell people that look, you can make something of yourself by starting your own business and growing your own business. So I appreciate you saying that. For me, My businesses have always been the vehicle for my own personal development. They've been the vehicle that causes me to level up and do things that I never would do on my own. And so, my first company, having to learn how to like hire people and fire people and manage people and lead teams and train people and all of these things were skills that I had to acquire over time that I had no interest in doing. I had no interest in learning these things, but it literally, like, my business made me a better person. And now with GreenPal, it's a completely digital business. We have a team of 23 people here that I help lead. But I've had to learn all kinds of skills building this company. How to design software, literally how to build software. I taught myself how to code in the early years to help out with building this project. And my companies are always the thing that causes me to level up, causes me to keep pushing the ball down the field, acquiring skills that I have no real genuine interest in acquiring, but like in order to compete, in order to be successful, the business is going to require that of you. And so that's one thing that I love about my businesses. I always have, and it's something that keeps me in the game, keeps me starting companies, keeps me, with my sleeves rolled up. And quite frankly, it's what I love to do now. Like I've been on this second project 7 years, and we had the first 3 years were 70, 80, in some cases 100-hour weeks, but I haven't worked a day in 7 years. I am only working on what I want to do, what I enjoy doing, and that is building this company and seeing it flourish. And I think that's a great place to get to in business, is to literally work on your company because it's what you want to do. It's what you enjoy doing. And I'm very blessed and fortunate to have gotten to that point.
No, that's awesome. I mean, you seem super scrappy. I mean, starting from nothing and building big teams. I mean, a lot of this audience, I mean, very, very small entrepreneurs, small business, less than 5 employees or so. I mean, what is the one thing, or is there one thing that you really saw work to really grow or scale the business? Is it more the marketing? Is it more the sales outreach in the process? Is it more building a team, or is it a little bit of everything? I mean, do you have any insight into maybe what some of those activities or actions are that really excelled both your companies?
Yeah, the answer to your question is everything you just mentioned and more. But uh, there's an analogy that I like to use, is to treat business as a video game. Uh, and I stole that from Brian Chesky, the founder of Airbnb. And so if you think about a video game, like, there's these skills that are required for level 1, level 2, level 3, and so on. And there's like a final boss at the end of each level. And like the skills you're going to need and the things you're going to need to do and master in level 1 are totally different than what's going to be required of you at like level 7, 8, or 9. But the reality is like, you don't even need to worry about level 7 or level 8 when you're on level 1. And so, like, level 1 is like getting started, getting your first $1,000 in revenue, $100,000 in revenue, and by any means necessary, being scrappy and being resilient enough to get to that point and to get past level 1, which might just be your first $100,000 in revenue. And so then you think about, okay, now I'm going to start level 2, which is, okay, I want to get to 250K in revenue. Okay, what am I going to have to do that? Well, I got to hire my first employee. And that's a big moment in any business owner's life, because basically you're like doubling your business. It's you plus one person. And so that's like the final boss of level 2, maybe. And then you look at level 3, it's like, okay, now I need like a team of 5. And now the things we're doing to grow sales are starting to peter out. And so we have to create some kind of sales engine at the core of this business and figure out what that is, and figure out our value proposition, and figure out what channels and marketing work better for us, and do a lot of testing and experimenting with those. And so maybe that's level 3. And then like this goes on and on and on. So we're like level 10, like, you're leading a team with 70, 80 people. You have departments. You're recruiting like senior level people to help you build this thing. You might be raising capital. It's like all of these high level things, which in reality you don't even need to worry about until like you're on that level and you have to conquer those things. And so, like, I think that's one of the things that a lot of entrepreneurs and new business owners get discouraged about, is like they get inundated with all of this information, all of this stuff that they should worry about. Like, and when in reality is like, don't even worry about that. Like, focus on your little circle of influence in the middle of this big circle of stuff that you could worry about, and act in that little circle, and just get to the next level. whatever you define that to be. And then you can worry about some more stuff when you get to the second level. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about like the internet and YouTube and podcasts like this, like these days, is like you can access the information you need at whatever level you're at. And so it's like, maybe you're just getting started. Maybe you just want to start a side hustle. Well, then you need to be consuming content around starting side hustles or starting a business part-time. And there's a bunch of podcasts and YouTube channels that focus on that. But maybe you have like $1 million in revenue and you want to get to $10 million in revenue. So now you're looking at things like systems and processes and how to build a flywheel in the middle of your business. Okay, well then you need to be reading books and listening to podcasts about people that talk about that. And so delineating these different things that are going to be required of you starting a business from scratch and growing and scaling it is important for your focus and also for you to be consuming the content and the knowledge that you need at that level of the game.
I absolutely love that and appreciate that. It's funny that you mentioned, I've never actually heard that used before, but I mean, I joke, I mean, we're a marketing agency and I joke that literally it feels like we're just in the middle of a video game. With all the data and analytics, it's how do you beat your high score every time, whether that's, I mean, people you're reaching and all that. So it's funny that you mentioned that. And, one thing that you brought up is not trying to focus too far ahead to where you get distracted at what's on your plate now. I think that's a big struggle for a lot of business owners, especially those that are starting out. I mean, do you have any tips on how to not think that far ahead, or is it just a matter of being disciplined? Or
yeah, it's hard because there's so much out there, and you're a newbie, and you don't know what you're supposed to be looking at and what you're supposed to be doing. So, two things. One of my favorite books is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen Covey. And he talks about this heuristic I just mentioned, which is your circle of influence and your circle of concern. And so circle of influence is everything. It's everything that's going on in business. It's like watching some other competitor or some other company that's just crushing it and you wish you were them. It's like COVID. It's the election. It's new technology that's coming out that doesn't necessarily pertain to what you're doing. Like, it's everything that's happening that you're getting distracted by. And then there's your circle of influence, which is a much, much smaller circle inside of that. And that's things that you can act on. So let's just say, like, you got your first $100,000 in revenue and you need to hire your first helper. Well, then that circle of influence is creating like a job description, literally, like creating like a process manual around what this person's going to do, defining that role, like creating the goals for that role, documenting all of this, and literally like you maybe even doing that job for a while so you can understand exactly what it is. That's inside of your circle of influence. And so like holding yourself accountable to what's out there and what's in your circle of concern, but really like acting in your circle of influence is something that helps like keep you focused, and also it helps like drive the ball down the field. And then the funny thing is, as you are working in that circle of influence, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's weird. The other thing that little heuristic that I've heard, and I didn't invent this, but it helps me, is the concept of output metrics and input metrics. And so output metrics is whatever it is. It's sales, it's market share, it's number of customers. It's like the goal. And you have to have a goal, and because without a goal, you can't score. And so you define whatever that goal is. Maybe if you're doing like $500,000 and you want to do $2 million in the next year. Okay, well then that's the output metric. But then you need to work backwards, and you need to like look at all the things that are going to go into making that come true. And so if you're you say you got a construction company or whatever, and like you need to like get more remodeling jobs, and you need to get more people to call your office, and to get more people to call your office, maybe you got to do more direct mail or door hangers or Facebook ads or customer referrals. Like, these are all the input metrics that you need to like drive forward to get to the output metrics. So you almost don't even need to worry about anything else other than like the daily like quota for whatever the input metrics is. Maybe it's calling 100 people a week. Maybe it's like you managing a campaign that's going to send out 10,000 postcards every month. Whatever that input metric is, you need to distill that down to a weekly set of activities that you got to hold yourself accountable to actually execute. And then you'll wake up in a very different reality a year later if you just rinse and repeat and work that process.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, what it comes down to is a lot of people are good at goal setting, but I think the thing that gets missed is reverse engineering and what activities need to be done that's going to get you there, and then being consistent with that. And I mean, from previous guests, I mean, that's the biggest piece is the how I'm going to get there, and then maintaining consistency in order to achieve those goals. But I mean, having those goals, whether it's on a monthly or quarterly or annual basis, whatever it may be, I think is the big first step into what does the future look like, and actually steering your ship, rather basically being proactive rather than reactive, and kind of letting the business run you.
Exactly. And so that's kind of like segues to another heuristic that I like to beat into my head and other people's heads is the concept of working on your business and not in your business. And so the early years, it's going to be 99% in your business. You're doing everything you can to just hold it together and get a few customers, service them, and get paid and reinvest that money. And so it's like you're all in. But the problem is most people just stay in their business. They never get outside of that. And so basically they just built themselves a job, and with a lot more headache and a lot more stress and a lot more risk than a normal job. And sadly, many business owners spend 5, 10, 20 years or a lifetime stuck in this trap of building themselves a job. They're essentially self-employed, and they don't have anything that even resembles a real business. And so you have to really look at, okay, I'm working in my business. I understand that, but I need to peel away layers of the week to work on my business. And so maybe that's a Saturday activity. Maybe that's a Sunday activity. You have to allocate time to do that work that is important, but it's not necessarily urgent. And those are the things that will help you work on your business. And the difference between in your business and on your business is, let's say you run a digital marketing agency, and one of the things that you guys do is you create you create email marketing campaigns for people, and somebody has to design that, and somebody's got to research that, and somebody's got to execute that. And you as the business owner, say you're a one-man shop, and you literally do all those things. Well, that's great. But as time goes on, you need to create your proprietary process for how you do that, and how you do that better than your competitors. And a thing that is like a routine. It's the way we do it. It's the way we do it here. And this is why we do it here. And this is the way we do it every single time. And if somebody's not a good fit for that, then we don't take them on as a client, because we're creating a repeatable and scalable model here. And it might just be you. It could just be you and one helper. But you have to start with that process that's repeatable. And so this sheer act of creating that process is a working on your business activity. And it's not fun. It's harder work than actually just doing it. But it's one of those things you have to hold yourself accountable to do. And it could be something that you got to do on nights and weekends while you're doing all the other things just to keep your business afloat.
Yep. No, I can agree more. It's literally something that we're going through. I mean, 2 years old, and it's I've been 100% in the business, and slowly but surely trying to peel back some of those activities to work more on it. And it's amazing the snowball effect, as maybe it's only an hour a week that you can work on it. But as you do that, it opens up another 30 minutes. And it's just taking advantage of that time when it does open up, not watching Netflix or whatever, but continue investing your time and energy into it. And now at a point to where it's almost split 50-50, and here pretty soon it'll be working on it. And so it's such a huge piece. But I think the biggest thing that you mentioned is, one, setting the goals on how you're going to do it, and two, just being accountable and actually doing it, which is tough.
It's tough because it's not our days are dominated by the urgent but not important. And so we're reactive. We're in a state of reaction all day. And it doesn't matter how good you get at this stuff. Even me personally, I struggle with it daily. It's we're dominated by notifications and email and push notifications and phone calls, and like we're in a constant state of reaction running our businesses, and we're dominated by things that are urgent but aren't important. And when in fact we need to, or even worse, they're not urgent and they're not important. Like that's where a lot of people spend their time too. And where you got to like move into is like that high leverage activity of important, but it's not necessarily like burning the house down right now. It's not necessarily urgent, but it's important. It's processes, it's strategy, it's differentiation in the market, it's customer research, it's talking to customers, it's talking to your teammates, it's trying to understand how to strengthen your value proposition, like your messaging around what it is you're doing and how it relates in like the competitive landscape and how you can differentiate that. It might be A/B testing if you run a digital product to try to get more insights about what your customer is thinking. Like all of these things are hugely important, but they aren't required to like keep the business open today. And so the problem is we never get around to them because we're just dominated by a state of reaction. And so, like you said, you almost got to like turn off Netflix and spend nights and weekends. Like, you know, if you're watching Yellowstone, you know, that was 12 hours you spent this week. You know, you could literally like spend 6 of that working on your business and leveled up, got to the next level.
Yeah. Do you do anything with like time blocking or anything like that? Because I used to really struggle with every email that came in, whether it was important or not. I felt like I had to respond within seconds, and it's tough to get away from there. But I started time blocking on maybe every hour. I respond to emails for 10, 15 minutes or whatever it may be. And once I started organizing my day and kind of owning it, started feeling more of the less reactive and more proactive on the day. But I mean, do you have any tips for entrepreneurs on how to accomplish that? Because I think that is something that a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs deal with.
I'd love to tell you that I had this stuff mastered and like, and I didn't react to email, and but I don't. What I have done is like the book, The 4-Hour Work Week. You try to like, you read that book, and you know that book is not about working 4 hours a week. That book is about delegating, creating systems, automating, and working 100 times more efficient and more effective than you are right now. And so rather than like beating myself up about checking email 20 times a day, I began to look at the root cause of things I was having to deal with and create systems and processes to solve those to where I could delegate them quicker or never have to do them again. And so a lot of times you try to focus on, okay, how do I prevent myself from ever having to do this again? And that will clean up a lot of your inbox, because a lot of your inbox is just dominated by stuff that is routine and it's stuff that could have been prevented if you had just like asked why 5 times as to why this person needs this thing. And a lot of times you can like reduce the flow. Now, you know, I get it. Some people can't just because of the nature of what they're doing, but you know, start that first, because you as the business owner, you need to be doing things that only the business owner can do. And those are like the things I mentioned a moment ago. Those are the things that only you can do. And so if somebody is like following up on like why an invoice hasn't been paid, or if somebody is following up about a certain thing that your team dropped the ball on, well, then you need to look at why did the team drop the ball and prevent that from never happening again. And then that will help reduce some of the flow.
Absolutely love it. Lots of great tips for entrepreneurs, but would love to spend a little bit of time on GreenPal. I mean, going from landscaping business, really, pushing the mowers and all that, to creating a marketplace, same vertical, same industry, but very, very different business models. What was that transition like?
Big. You're very astute for understanding the difference. They are totally different businesses. The only thing is similar is that we're making grass short. But man, I didn't know what I didn't know starting the company, and so I was very naive. And my naivete is what got me in the game. If I had known how challenging and difficult it was going to be, I probably would have gotten scared off, and I never would have started this business, because you're building a digital product for two user bases. And then you're building a marketplace to connect them, and then you're trying to orchestrate the delicate balance between suppliers and consumers, and striking like the balance between the two of them, because their interests are not always aligned. And then the economics of making all of that work for all three parties: the supplier, the homeowner, and the platform us to have an economic engine to keep us going, it was really, really hard. And so the only way we got through it, my two co-founders and I, was that we just did not give up. We were rewarded with a little bit of validation every step of the way to know that we were working on a good idea. But a lot of it in the early days was just an exercise of faith. And quite frankly, I didn't have a better idea to work on. And so this was my best idea. And so by default, it's the thing I'm going to work on. And so I think a lot of times, if you're in business, you're trying to look at it as though it's an infinite game. It is like something you're just going to be doing until it's done. And however long that takes is however long that takes, I think, is the way to kind of get through those first 2, 3, 4 years that are the hardest. And that's how we got through it. When we first launched our first product, it was a total dud, total piece of crap. And we didn't know how to code. We didn't know how to do any of this stuff. And so when we launched, we paid like a development shop in Nashville, something like $150,000 out of our own pocket, financed it with credit cards and what little savings my co-founders had. And we launched this thing, and it was a total flop. And we were just disheartened. But we realized that, okay, if we're going to be in the tech space, if we're going to build this digital product, we got to learn how to write code. We got to learn how to design software. And so we just went to work on half of the week learning the skills we needed to learn, and the other half executing. That took 3 years to get good at this stuff. And then, little by little, our user base was increasing. We're making a little bit of money. And as we were doing these things, we began to understand, okay, this is how we're going to build out a team around us. And these are the skills that we need to hire for. And we started little by little getting more and more helpers and freelancers and employees. And now here we are today. We're 7 years in. We have 23 people working on the project with us, and we're profitable. But it sure didn't start that way. And the first 3 years was very much an exercise of faith.
Yeah, and how much was A/B testing and using data and all of that in growing the business? Because we're just huge on analytics and data, and everything that we do is reverse engineered based off of that data. And
so interesting answer to that question. So we started testing and spending time on that too soon. Oh man, there used to be a guy by the name of Startup L Jackson who would tweet on Twitter, and he was like this character that would like give startup advice, but like in Samuel L. Jackson's voice. It was hilarious. And he was talking about A/B testing for startups. And I think that the quote was, your ass don't need a 3% lift. You need 10 orders of magnitude more customers. And I read that one day and I was like, oh God, this is so true. We're sitting here wasting our time, like A/B testing button colors and stuff. And when in fact we had like 1,000 visitors to the website last month. Like we need to, like, there's no reason to optimize the checkout experience. We have to figure out a way to get more traffic and get more people to try this thing. And we wasted so much time testing and doing that crap too soon. So we had to revert back to like just hustling what were the things we needed to do to compete and to get more customers. And we just focused on that for about 2 years. And then we got enough traffic to where testing made sense. And now we do, we're running 20, 30 experiments at all times up and down the acquisition funnel and in the product. And we're always learning new stuff. And so, on the one hand, it always helps to kind of like do some testing in the early days. The fact is you probably don't have enough traffic to do it, but you can test in the channel, like on AdWords, and, test copy on Facebook ads and stuff, and try to get a better understanding around like what makes your user or your customer say yes. I mean, that stuff's always good. I mean, I guess it's good to start that early, but I think a lot of new, specifically like tech entrepreneurs, like over-index on A/B testing and conversion rate optimization in the early days before they even have like a product. And because it's what I call fake work, it's just like something you think you're doing that's helping, and it's not. Like, when in reality, you need to be like talking to customers, talking to users, like understanding how they think, understanding what it is they want, and then figuring out how you're going to get more of them. Like, that's really like the activities for the first few years. unless this is your second or third go around and you've raised a bunch of money and you're going to move super quick, which I don't advise. That's not the reality most business owners find themselves in the first years. That like spend a bunch of time A/B testing. That's more like year 3, 4, and 5, at least from my experience. And then it can be super helpful. We made one change to our checkout that like increased sales like 7%. Just
Jeez.
one thing.
What was that? Do you remember what that was?
We designed and added a little badge, and we tested like 8 different badges underneath the credit card form. One was like Better Business Bureau verified. One was backed by the GreenPal guarantee, money back guarantee. One was $1 million in insurance coverage. Another one was reviews off of our Trustpilot page. And then there were 2 or 3 others and some different variations of those. And like the winner gave us a 7% lift.
Wow.
Of people filling out the credit card form.
That's huge.
Huge. But when you have 100 customers,
yeah,
doesn't really matter. And not only that, the time you spent designing that test and an engineer working on it, and you could have been doing 2 or 3 other things and move the ball forward on some stuff you probably should have done. So like that's why it can distract you, I think.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. It's funny how it's pretty much flip-flopped. A lot of younger, smaller businesses A/B testing like crazy, haven't hit critical mass, don't have a ton of people who know them. And then you have these, working with a client doing over $1 billion a year in revenue, and it's like not doing any email, doing no testing. And it's crazy the different, just getting insights into that on who's doing what and what's driving business.
Yeah, I think like scarcity is the mother of invention. And so for us, we're bootstrapped and we're self-funded, and man, it's been really hard, but I'm glad we did it this way. And so now we have to look for ways to pick up revenue. We just have to. Like we have to look for ways to squeeze out more dollars and connect more people with the value that we have. And so that's why we're testing, like, because it makes sense now. If we were making, $100 million a year and
7%
I was talking to you right now on my yacht, I probably wouldn't give a damn about A/B testing. But that's not the reality we find ourselves in.
Yep. No, I can agree. And what you've created is a marketplace. I think they are awesome. One, it helps owners, it helps those that are fulfilling the service, and it helps those that are looking for the service just get what they want. It brings the cost of service down for the consumer. They get more competition. There are more and more of these marketplaces showing up. What do you think the future of marketplaces are? Are we going to grow in marketplaces, and are they going to get very niche down, or what do you think the state of marketplaces looks like in the future?
Yeah. So on the one hand, we're in like minute 2 of day 1 of online marketplaces. Well, the first like awesome marketplace was eBay in the 90s, and now here we are. There's probably 100 really successful marketplaces that are publicly traded. And so on the one hand, yeah, marketplaces are a great business because they employ network effects, which increases defensibility for the business. And they create value, they unlock value, they make things more efficient. They create experiences that ordinarily were not possible. And so marketplaces are a really good business to try to build. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, there is like a graveyard of failed marketplaces for everything under the sun that billions and billions of dollars has been crashing to the ground trying to get them going. So, on the one hand, they're great businesses. On the other hand, they're really, really, really tough. And they're very capital intensive to even try to like figure out if they're a good idea or not. So I don't recommend like everybody try to just go run out and just like start a marketplace for a problem that they have, because you got to really think it through that, whatever it is, you need to be like excited about spending the next decade of your life pursuing, because that's how long it takes to get a marketplace business off the ground. And yeah, there's outliers, there's companies that have raised a ton of capital like Uber and Lyft and even Airbnb, but those are great marketplace businesses. They took a lot of money to get going, and now they're worth 50 some odd $100 billion. But for most entrepreneurs, a marketplace is going to be a tough slog, and it's one that you're going to need to really be adaptable and nimble to try to figure it out as you go, because there's so many different layers of things you're trying to figure out. You're trying to balance the needs and desires of two sides of that transaction, and you're trying to architect the economics of how that marketplace is going to work. But when you get it dialed in, you can really move. And so we're just now, 6 years in, figuring it out. Figuring out how it works to where service providers can make meaningful money on our platform, and homeowners can get a great lawn mowing service in minutes at a cheaper price and at a better quality. It took us a long time to get here.
Yeah, I mean, without giving any trade secrets or anything away, I mean, what is the difference between those that are in the graveyard and kind of what you guys are building, where you guys have been in business for a while, you're seeing success? Is it the fact that it takes a lot of capital to even test an idea, or are there different things in how the marketplace is getting built out that might be the nuance in success and defeat?
Yeah, so it's a multitude of reasons. It's not one reason why all of them failed. So some of the reason is they raised too much capital. HomeJoy is like a great example of an app marketplace that connected homeowners with maid services, and they raised like $50 million in a year and a half, and they had to like spend it all on growth, and they just didn't have the model figured out yet, and so quality suffered. And at the end of the day, nobody gives a damn about how good your technology is. Like, all they wanted was a clean floor. And so that's an example of probably raising too much capital and trying to commoditize a service that didn't need to be commoditized. But they could have built a really good business if they just approached it differently. If they had approached that business like we are approaching ours, they could have built a really good business in maid cleaning. So, like, that's one reason. Another reason is the economics of a particular business that the marketplace is looking to revolutionize. The founders really don't have any idea what the economics look like, and so they kind of naively like go like head charge into the business, and they don't really understand it. Like, there was 2 or 3 marketplaces that tried to like bubble up around laundry service, and none of those founders ever spent a day of their life in a dry cleaning shop. If they had just taken a year and like been the assistant manager at a dry cleaner, they would have understood that there's no way you can clean somebody's laundry, pick it up, clean it, and deliver it for $12. Like, you just can't do that. And so, but they would have figured out something else that would have worked, yeah. Right? And so I think a lot of times the founders aren't solving their own problem. They're trying to apply and throw technology at a industry that they know nothing about. And so for us, like, my 2 co-founders and I didn't have any technical acumen when we started this business, and that was really hard. But at least we were solving our own problem. Like, I knew the industry. I knew how it worked, and so I knew kind of like what we needed to build, at least in the beginning. And so that helps. Some other reasons are like a low frequency, no recurring frequency. It can hurt a marketplace because it costs so much to get a consumer, and then unless it's a really high ticket item, it's hard to make back the customer acquisition costs. So there's probably like a dozen reasons for failure, and there's probably like a dozen reasons for success, and so it's not one thing, but as an entrepreneur, if you're going to try to start, if anybody's listening to this who's going to wants to start a marketplace, you need to be like poring over every blog post and YouTube channel you can of people talking about marketplaces, and there's tons of them. I listen to them. Like, I don't watch TV. I watch YouTube on my TV, and I watch a YouTube channel called Everything Marketplaces. And all this guy does is interview CEOs of marketplaces. And that's what I watch every night because I'm still learning. It's hard, but it can be done. Totally can be done.
Yeah, no, it sounds like there's quite a few different things that determine success and failure. I mean, similar to everything else, and it's not one particular thing. Knowing that, I mean, what are you guys working on to continue your success in the next 3 to 6 months? I mean, I know a lot of people like to talk about long-term visions and all that, but what are you guys working on right now to continue your guys' growth over the next 3 to 6 months?
Yeah, so we're in relentless search of friction to make the process of finding somebody to cut your grass as easy and as cost effective as possible. So even 7 years in, we're still tackling one problem. And so that's like a good lesson for any entrepreneurs, like focus on one thing and be the best in the world at that one thing. That's what's helped us like get to the point we're at. And so even 7 years in, we're still trying to make it more reliable, more efficient, more cost effective. And so one thing that we've spent the last 6 months working on is a feature called AutoBid, where we take all of the data that our system generates in terms of what average lawn mowing costs are per zip code, per square foot, and we surface that to service providers. And the good ones that are really reliable and that have done a bunch of work on the platform and have good ratings, we enable this feature for them to set auto bid prices for people that are looking for lawn mowing services. So let's say you sign up in a zip code and this lawn mowing service has 12 customers in that same zip code. They know they can mow your yard for $37. And so you instantly see it. You don't have to wait on them to quote it. And that's improved our conversion drastically on helping connect people with somebody who wants to cut their yard. But we wouldn't be able to like do that like right out the box. You can only like offer that type of intelligent solution until somebody's achieved a certain number of transactions in that particular area, and has proven themselves as reliable and has proven themselves as somebody that would offer a delightful experience to this homeowner. And so it's something that's taken us 7 years to build, and or 7 years to get to the point where we even could build it. Yeah. And so that's what we're still working on. It's like, okay, how do you make it like reinforce the flywheel effect of you get bids quicker or instantly, you get better pricing, you get the service done on the day you want, you get a great job done, and then you can just book them for the rest of the lawn mowing season. Like we fix all of that, and then more vendors make more money off of it, and the more vendors that make more money off of it, the more vendors that want to use the platform, and then the more vendors that want to use the platform, that reinforces everything else that I just laid out in that flywheel. So like constantly like reinforcing that flywheel and looking at the activities we need to do to speed it up is still what we're working on.
Yeah, no, I bet you when you guys do that, you're going to see such huge improvements in terms of how long it takes for a bid to go out until it's actually approved. I mean, that one feature I think is going to be huge in propelling the business. And so I can't wait to watch and follow and watch you come out with it. Maybe we can do a round 2 on how this particular thing has impacted the business.
Heck yeah, I'd love that.
Awesome. Through this, I mean, there's been a lot that you talked about. You watch YouTube. You've read some books by some pretty big people. I mean, it sounds like you're always learning and educating yourself on how to become just a better business owner or operator. What is one piece of content or one book or whatever it may be that has just kind of blown your mind or opened your eyes and really just helped change your career or entrepreneur path?
Wow, where do I even start? So one of my favorite quotes is Mark Zuckerberg. He says, "Don't be a know-it-all, be a learn-it-all." And you got to think like that dude was like running Facebook. I think they turned down $1 billion acquisition and he was 23. Like, that's just insane. Like that dude was 19 when they started that business. So like, but his secret power is he's constantly learning and learning quickly and applying that knowledge. And not that like I'm drawing any parallels between me and that dude,
yeah,
except for the fact that you have to like have that principle at your like core to understand that you don't even know what you don't know. And so you have to constantly be looking for information and knowledge from people who are smarter and have done what it is you're trying to do. And so that said, like I'm always trying to like read at least one book a month, ideally 2. And I don't watch much television other than like YouTube on my TV, because I actually enjoy it. I actually enjoy learning more stuff because like I said, I was a C student in college. Like I'm not the smartest guy, but I've kind of like been satisfied by how what I've been able to learn building this business. So for me, it's in a certain level was kind of fun. Some books that I've gotten value out of, 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel is a good book to just kind of like helps you crystallize the idea of like incremental innovation and like and just like making a big bet and like trying to create a winner take all business. That one is like a big macro, like high level thinking business book. But then all the way down to other books that are more like hands on and tactical, like The E-Myth by Michael Gerber is a book about like how to. It's more related to like how we started this conversation. Like, how do you build a team? How do you create an org chart for your business? How do you think about like defining the roles and goals of your business and delegating and build a business right the first time? So thank God that we live in a time now where all this stuff is so accessible and easily consumable. You know, when I was building my first business in the late 90s, like I literally like had to go find like cassette tapes and put them in my cassette player to like try to find some of this stuff. Now you can dial anything up on YouTube. It's amazing.
You know, just talk to your phone and it shows right up.
It's incredible.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, I same thing. I don't watch TV other than with my wife for maybe an hour, what she wants to watch, but everything else is podcast. I don't read a whole lot, but podcasts and YouTube videos, and always love learning. Might not be a genius at one thing, but I know a little about a lot. So
yeah, and like I'm not saying don't ever watch TV, never, but like create a deal with yourself to where like for every hour of fun TV, you watch an hour of something that's going to help you learn. They're like, for me, marketplaces are what I learn, and like there's a conference in San Francisco called the Marketplace Conference. And it's like $2,000 to go to. I've never been to it, but you can watch the whole damn thing on YouTube. And that's actually what I'm watching right now. Like I'm watching the one that they had a few months ago. The whole thing is right there. Like, and then I watch these videos. Like there's like the head growth lead of Uber in year 2, and he's just talking about how they did it. And like the video has 12 views.
It's insane.
It's insane. Like this stuff is out there. You just have to like be willing to seek it out and learn, and you can like do this stuff.
Yeah, no, I can agree. I mean, this has been a great conversation. I think to kind of wrap it up, I would love to hear, like I said, a lot of our audience are entrepreneurs and small business owners, those who are just kind of starting out. What's the biggest piece of advice that you'd have for them?
Anybody just getting started, like starting is the hardest part. Focus on the 2 or 3 things you can do this week and do them to get started, to get closer. Like you need to know that the only way you're going to learn is by doing, and the more you can do, the more you're going to learn. And it's like everybody is like wants to hire somebody else to do it, or they think they have all these barriers to entry. You really don't. Like take it as far as you can, whatever it is, like, and get your first dollar made, and then reevaluate. And like going back to the levels of the video game, like get in the game, because only when you're in the game can you win.
I love it. Couldn't have said it better. Bryan, this has been great. I can't wait to have a client that does lawn care, so I'm going to introduce him to the platform. Bryan, thank you so much for your time. Lots of great knowledge that you shared. Excited to watch your growth and see what the near future looks like for you guys.
Awesome, Dustin. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.